Carolyn Forché we're gonna read as the last one. I was talking a lot about you now, Carolyn. I won't repeat almost anything of this in English. I think it's better like that. I'm very happy that you're among us and that you will conclude this poetry reading. Thank you so much for coming, Carolyn. Please, the stage is yours.
It's a very great honor to be here this evening, to be here in Betui and to be in Slovenia for Days of Wine and Poetry. I want to thank Aleš and Kristina for bringing me, and Kristina, thank you so much for bringing my poetry into Slovenian. I'm very grateful, and it's an honor to read with my colleagues here on the stage. And I want to thank all the people who make the sound and the lighting so beautiful. Thank you for your work tonight, and everyone else who makes this possible. It's very moving. I'm going to read 4 poems. The first one comes from a long time ago, from my time in El Salvador before the 12-year civil war. It is a prose poem, and it has an obscenity in it. I think there's more than one obscenity, but there's only one word that I'm not allowed to say on the radio in the United States. So I will let you guess which word that would be. But I'm not saying that word in the poem, I'm quoting someone else. The Colonel, what you have heard is true. I was in his house. His wife carried a tray of coffee and sugar. His daughter filed her nails. His son went out for the night. There were daily papers, pet dogs, a pistol on the cushion beside him. The moon swung bare on its black cord over the house. On the television was a cop show. It was in English. Broken bottles were embedded in the walls around the house to scoop the kneecaps from a man's legs or cut his hands to lace. On the windows there were gratings like those in liquor stores. We had dinner, rack of lamb, good wine. A gold bell was on the table for calling the maid. The maid brought green mangoes, salt, a type of bread. I was asked how I enjoyed the country. There was a brief commercial in Spanish. His wife took everything away. There was some talk then of how difficult it had become to govern. The parrot said hello on the terrace. The Colonel told it to shut up and pushed himself from the table. My friend said to me with his eyes, "Say nothing." The Colonel returned with a sack used to bring groceries home. He spilled many human ears on the table. They were like dried peach halves. There is no other way to say this. He took one of them in his hands, shook it in our faces, dropped it into a water glass. It came alive there. "I am tired of fooling around," he said. "As for the rights of anyone, tell your people they can go fuck themselves." He swept the ears to the floor with his arm and held the last of his wine in the air. "Something for your poetry, no?" he said. Some of the ears on the floor caught this scrap of his voice. Some of the ears on the floor were pressed to the ground. San Salvador, May 1978. This next poem is another poem. It's a a friend of another poem that was read this evening. This is about a refugee from Syria, and whom I met, and who told me his story on the condition that someday I would try to write his story. And I told him I couldn't promise this because poems come by themselves. They decide what they're about. The poet doesn't have a lot of choice. But then his poem came, so I was able to fulfill it. He was from Homs in Syria. The boatman. We were 31 souls, he said, in the gray sick of sea, in a cold rubber boat, rising and falling in our filth. By morning, this didn't matter. No land was in sight. All were soaked to the bone, living and dead. We could still float, we said, from war to war. What lay behind us but ruins of stone piled on ruins of stone? City called Mother of the Poor, surrounded by fields of cotton and millet. City of jewelers and cloak makers, with the oldest church in Christendom and the sword of Allah. If anyone remains there now, he assures, they would be utterly alone. There is a hotel named for it in Rome, 200 meters from the Piazza di Spagna, where you can have breakfast under the portraits of film stars. There, the staff cannot do enough for you. But I am talking nonsense again, as I have since that night. We fetched a child, not ours, from the sea, drifting face down in a life vest, its eyes taken by fish or the birds above us. After that, Aleppo went up in smoke, and Raqqa came under a rain of leaflets warning everyone to go. Leave, yes, but go where? We lived through the Americans and Russians, through Americans again, many nights of death from the clouds. Mornings, surprised to be waking from the sleep of death, still unburied and alive, with no safe place. Leave, yes, we'll obey the leaflets, but go where? To the sea to be eaten? To the shores of Europe to be caged? To Camp Misery and Camp Remain here? I ask you then, where? You tell me you are a poet. If so, our destination is the same. I find myself now the boatman, driving a taxi at the end of the world. I will see that you arrive safely, my friend. I will get you there. The next, thank you. Thank you. I love lighthouses, and I try to visit them wherever they are. So this is about lighthouses and the history of lighthouses, but as with all poems, it's also about something else. The Light Keeper. Oh, this lighthouse is in Ireland, and it's called Hook. And it's right across the water from a lighthouse called Crook. So we have in English this expression, by hook or by crook, and nobody knows where it came from. And I think it comes from you have to follow one lighthouse or the other. The Light Keeper. A night without ships, foghorns calling into walled cloud, and you still alive, drawn to the light as if it were a fire kept by monks. Darkness once crusted with stars, but now death dark, as you sail inward. Through wild gorse and sea wrack, through heather and torn wool you ran, pulling me by the hand so I might see this for once in my life. The spin and spin of light, the whirring of it. Light in search of the lost, there since the era of fire, era of candles and hollow wick lamps, whale oil and solid wick, colza and lard, kerosene and carbide. The signal fires lighted on this perilous coast in the Tower of Hook. You say to me, stay awake. Be like the lens maker who died with his lungs full of glass. Be the yew in blossom when bees swarm. Be their amber cathedral, and even the ghosts of Cistercians will be kind to you. In a certain light, as after rain, in pearled clouds or the water beyond, seen or sensed water, sea or lake, you would stop still and gaze out for a long time. Also when fireflies opened and closed in the pines and a star appeared, our only heaven. You taught me to live like this, that after death, it would be as it was before we were born. Nothing to be afraid, nothing but happiness, as unbearable as the dread from which it comes. Go toward the light always. Be without ships. And the last poem is for my friend, the Ukrainian poet Ilya Kaminsky. And we went together to Odessa in 2004, and he has just gone there and come back again. He lives in the United States now, and we are keeping watch over Odessa in our sleep, in our dreams, in our waking thoughts. So this is about that first journey to Odessa, and it's for everyone's survival and the end of this war. Exile. If it happened once, it happened in Odessa. The city of your childhood rises between steppe and sea, wheat and light, white with the dust of cockle shells, stargazers, and bones of pipefish. City of limestone, soft enough to cut with a hatchet, where the sea unfurls and acacias brought by Greeks on their ships turn white in summer. So yes, you remember? This is the city you lost. City of smugglers and violinists, chess players and monkeys, an opera house, a madhouse, a ghost church with wind for its choir, where two things were esteemed: literature and ships, poetry and the sea. If you return now, it will not be as a being visible to others. And when you walk past, it will not be as if a man had passed, but rather as if someone had remembered something long forgotten and wondered why. If you return, your father will be alive to prepare for you his mint cucumber soup and to give you the little sweet called bird's milk. And after hours of looking with him for his sandals lost near the sea, you visit again together the amusement park where your ancestors are buried, and then go home to the apartment house built by German prisoners of war, to whom your father gave bread, which you remember surprised you. You take the tram to a stop where it is no longer possible to get off. And he walks with you until he vanishes, still holding in his own your invisible hand. Thank you.